Hi, welcome to Comics Odyssey. I'm Ulysses. Today we're going to look at this amazing comic book by David Kelly called Asterios Polyp. It's quite the exploration of the theme of duality, and it's actually kind of difficult to talk about because it's so deep and impressive, but we're going to do our best, and I'm sure you're going to appreciate this book and might even search it out yourself. Before we get into that, I want to invite you to subscribe wherever you're listening to this, probably on Substack. You can subscribe for free. You get most of the stuff for free. Paid subscribers get a 30% discount off everything at my store. So when I release comics or art prints, you'll get a 30% discount, and you also get additional content that is for paid subscribers only. Also linked below, Spirit Girl 1 and 2. These are comics that I made. You can read both comics for $1 only, so check all of the links. All right, let's dive into this thing. I've separated the the dust cover? Is that what it's called? Slip cover? Slip cover is for a bed. Dust cover is for a book. So that it's easier to kind of handle, but it comes with a dust cover. I got this at a used bookstore. You probably can get it at the library. It's got all the New York Times accolades and all that stuff. All the hoity-toity people of book media approve of this comic, but don't let that deter you. It actually is a good comic. David Mazzucchelli, I've know about him from superhero comics. He did an amazing Batman Year One comic that I purchased in artist edition. I'll put some image up on the video here. And he did a great job of that super immersive artwork. But this here is also his writing work, the whole thing, David Mazzucchelli. So let's take a look. Here there's an engraving. I think that's what it's called, engraving. It's kind of pressed in. We have the main character here, whose name is Asterios Polyp, smoking a cigarette. He's looking left, and then if we flip the other side, hopefully you can see. Let me adjust the light here. The light's coming in bright from the window. The same character looking right, not smoking. Right? Here's dressed in a suit, like dress suit, very formal wear. Here's dressed in casual clothing with the sleeves rolled up. This is actually significant to the story, which is, as I mentioned, an exploration of duality. Opens very strong, graphically speaking, and narratively. We got a storm coming and the lightning hitting the city, which is just graphically an arresting image, and narratively comes to mean something later on. So Asterios Polyp is a architect, a paper architect. By that they mean that none of his designs have actually been built, but he's got a lot of prestige teaching at a university. And he's a super uptight, hyper-rational, theoretically minded person. And we open here on strong conflict, where his apartment he's quite slovenly at this point in time. His beautiful modernist apartment is quite in bad shape. Here we have the lightning that we saw earlier strikes the building and sets it on fire, and he has to leave, and he leaves with only a few items. So this man who had kind of built around himself, constructed around himself like an identity out of the items that he had, all the modernist furniture and stuff, has to leave with only a few items. Here we have his origin. He's a twin, but his other twin, Ignatius, did not live to be born. So again, right away we have the duality, and we have kind of a yin and yang looking thing. And so graphically speaking, he's got an architectural kind of design out of circles with circle shapes cut out of it. And his twin here is already expressing the duality of life and death, right? So this super confident man now has been like super confident constructed man, I guess you could say, now has to rebuild. And so graphically, this book, it really is a comic book at its foundation. This could not be filmed. It could possibly be animated, but we see here he's expressing some philosophical themes. What if reality, as perceived, were simply an extension of the self? And here we have different people and their reality expressed as different styles of cartooning, right? And then he posits that might explain why some people seem to get along so effortlessly. So these people are similar. You know, they're built out of lines, sketchy looking people. So they kind of are in the same visual grouping. So that would assume that their reality have overlap, and so they get along that way. But others don't. So these are two very different styles. So what we see, as you saw, like in the opening image there of David Mazzucchelli's Batman Year One, it's a distinct style that fits the project. But at this point, David Mazzucchelli's style for Asterios Polyp, this comic book, he doesn't have a style. His style is mastery of styles, which is incredible, right? Like, these two things are completely different styles of drawings. All of this, the style is just mastery of styles. But then he returns to the chosen style of this book, but you know, the style will alter depending on the character and what he's trying to express about the character. Let me adjust the camera a little bit here. Yeah. So here we have, we really don't need much dialogue or narration to understand who Asterios Polyp is as a character. He's an architect, and visually he's represented as a constructed, architecturally constructed person, but it's like a theory thing because he's a paper architect. He's never built anything, so he's not a full actually person, right? He's not completely built. It's all in the realm of abstraction, right? There are some funny moments where, you know, they're talking about art school archetypes. And as you can see here, we've got different characters that kind of enter in and start to influence Asterios Polyp and his kind of rigid self-construction, right? So this lady comes in this visual style, red. He's expressed in blue and quite rigid, calculated lines. But, he's being seduced, so that melts his rigid nature, right? And finally, he meets this one girl who's, a really good match for him in the sense that she's like an opposite. And here it's quite well expressed when they have a disagreement. They revert to their base characteristics, where she's quite sketchy. She's built out of lines, where he's kind of blocky, quite rigid. She's confronting him about why he thinks he's always right. Now, the character, Asterios Polyp, it opens up. He's not a likable character. You have to kind of accept that it's his. He's not a great guy, and the story is about him learning to be a real person, right? And you get a lot of hints about the central themes here, right? Early on, we had a building. Hopefully, I can find it quickly here. A city, 2 windows, rural, 2 windows. Right? So we have a double duality. City, like urban versus rural, and then we have the duality. It's a deliberate choice to only light 2 windows. Asterios Polyp finally encounters, he needs a job, so he works at a mechanic's store. Like, look at these layouts. Here we have a layout that graphically expresses this character Hannah, who it kind of expresses her life story and her character, where she gets ignored a lot in her family, but she's quite brilliant. So the spotlight's always missing her, right? And that factors in eventually. This is a key scene where Asterios Polyp and Hannah meet each other. And we can see the duality of the characters here very brilliantly expressed. But because they develop an interest with each other, they start to adopt each other's characteristics and build a new, or you could say harmonious unity built on both different archetypes that they are. So he's built out of blocky, she's sketchy, and she becomes a little bit blocky, and he becomes a little bit more sketchier, so more rendered. So it's quite, and all these other people at this party are expressed using different art styles. So instead of individual specific people, they represent archetypes. The characters here are very likable. He gets adopted by this family, basically. I had read this already, and I remember being impressed by the mastery of the medium, but I've forgotten how unlikable Polyp was. So I found a little bit of a slog at the beginning. But once you get to these guys, these are really people that are quite relatable and likable. And Asterios keeps meeting people that are different kinds of opposites to him, but are quite kind to him, right? This lady here is quite into astrology and all that, and Polyp just thinks that's nonsense, being a hyper-rational person. He's not a very intuitive or spiritual person, right? I put some bookmarks to show like different key moments and how it's very well expressed here. When the characters have arguments, they're no longer depicted in the same style, they revert to their fundamental characteristics, right? Whereas here, she's in his apartment, so his apartment looks quite square and modernist, and so it reflects a little bit more of him, whereas suddenly she finds herself alienated due to this disagreement they're having. So much of this has to do with duality. Here we see Asterios Polyp's family, where his mother is caretaking his comatose father, and he's quite unfeeling about it. For instance, when his mother starts to relate her experience of being a caretaker, he's quite annoyed about it. And as you can see, his word balloons are in square, where his mother's are rounded. It's just so many details, visual details, that communicate things about the story and the characters. And here, his mother continues telling the story, and I want to tell you this part because it was quite mind-blowing, and it's like at the center of the book, pretty much at the center of the book, right? And it is, for me as a reader, it was quite a pivotal moment. So she talks about how when her husband had a stroke, she would pray to God, just keep Jean alive. I was so sure he was going to die any minute and I'd be left all alone, but your father didn't die. And then she says, and we see the crucifix here, it sounds terrible, but I started praying for God to take Jean. I thought he's suffering. Nobody should live like this, but still your father didn't die. This is what my life turned into, feeding him and washing him and talking to him, and never knowing if he understood, because he's comatose. She doesn't know if all her efforts are basically unknown to her husband. And then later she says, but now I know what God was trying to tell me. After all those years taking care of your father, washing and feeding him while he was staring straight ahead, it was this: just because we don't hear the Lord, it doesn't mean he stopped talking to us. And then we turn the page, and Asterios Polyp's theories about what's actually going on are, again, stilted, hyper-constructed. It's all this, he's trying to construct something in abstraction and theory, but his mother is actually living the thing. So her wisdom is more attractive and has more of the ring of truth to it than Asterios Polyp's dismissal of the whole thing as it's all a big mommy complex, this overly complicated thing. This book is quite brilliant. It's a lot of it happens. It's quite dense in terms of what happens to the character. I did find myself a little bit missing how, I wished, I kind of missed being able to immerse myself into a fantastical worlds, but this is the inner world of a person who's got to learn to be more likable, I guess. So it's not entertainment, right? It's more literary in that sense, which I guess is why it gets the nod from New York Times people. So the story has a really cool ending that is in keeping with the exploration of the themes of duality. The character Asterios Polyp does learn how to be like a real person instead of a constructed abstraction of a person. I'm not going to reveal how that happens in case you want to read this. But do I recommend it? Yes, I recommend it, both as a good story about, a person having to learn to be real and authentic, and a demonstration of mastery of the medium. Some people might find it distracting that it's so good at being a comic, but I found the balance to be really good. It has a compelling narrative. It's not just a flex of how good of a comics master he is. So that's Asterios Polyp by David Mazzucchelli. If you do read this book, let me know what you think. If your library doesn't have it, request that they buy it. They probably will. I was lucky to find this in the used bookstore at a pretty heavy discount, so I'm grateful to have this on my shelf. It looks good on the shelf. It's a well-designed book. My wife was commenting on the smart use of color, which she's more of the master of color in our household. So she notices that more. I did notice, the red and blue, and how that's like also an architectural reference. They use plastic films and different colored pencils and stuff. So, yeah. That's it for Asterios Polyp. Thanks for joining me. I hope this was edifying for you, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts were. I'll see you in the comments. Bye-bye.